when women struggle with men, and we could flip the genders on this. It doesn't just go both ways. People will say things like, "I attract the wrong people." All the guys I like don't like me. All the men who like me, I don't like. And they're really just describing the single condition. Every single person feels that way about dating. There's nothing unique about it. So if your belief is that you attract the wrong people, my response is you don't attract the wrong people. You select the wrong people. You double down on the wrong people. You're not a magnet. It doesn't just happen to you. If you choose emotionally unavailable men because your dad was emotionally unavailable and you think that one day that emotionally unavailable man is going to change because you love him deeply, it's your selection process. It's like buying the wrong food at the supermarket. I keep on going in the Cheeto aisle. Why aren't I losing weight?
I am very excited to welcome our next guest, Evan, to Quiet the Clock podcast. I had the opportunity to speak with him previously, and I know this is going to be a very great episode, and he has a lot to offer our audience. So I appreciate you being here, and welcome to Quiet the Clock.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. I'm really excited.
Awesome. So you are the very first dating coach. So I'm so curious to hear about dating when you first started as a coach versus dating now.
The world's changed, technology changed, I've changed. So it's I don't know where you'd want to begin, but I started this journey in my mid-20s when I was looking for love, and I was an early adopter of online dating in like the late 90s. We've really been doing this for a long time. And I got a job answering phones at an online dating company, just a temp job. It was a thing to do to pay the bills while I was in film school at age 29 or so. And after a year of doing it, I realized, oh my God, I know more about online dating than anybody I'm talking to because I'm using the website and I'm talking to people on the phone. So I'm a writer. I live in Hollywood. I wrote a book about online dating in 2003 called I Can't Believe I'm Buying This Book, A Common Sense Guide to Successful Internet Dating. And unlike my Hollywood career, the book did very well. And suddenly I was in USA Today and Time Magazine and CNN. And I just hung out my shingle, dropped out of film school, became the dating guy. And that was 20 years ago. And since then, I've devoted all my time and energy to taking this venture very seriously. And it was before there was a time that there was social media or dating coaching or dating apps. You know, we were using old school dating sites, which I still recommend, by the way, the Match.com type sites. I still recommend them because they're superior. But that's another conversation. So dating has morphed as I've morphed. I spent 10 years of prolific online dating. I've now been married for 15 years. I've been coaching for 20. And so there's no real resemblance to the way people date now, which is the gamification of dating, swiping on photos and texting. It is the world's worst form of dating, is the predominant form of dating.
Wow, that's a hard statement to hear, and that's interesting because I'm a therapist. I work with a lot of clients, and I don't hear anyone saying they love the apps or they love online dating, but it is the major platforms or form of doing it. I would love for you to share your love story because I think it is really inspiring in a way that, you and I have talked to and I want to get to this sort of how we can limit our vision of who is possible. And particularly if we have a certain pattern we might not have identified or an attachment style that we're not clear on. I think the way that you met your wife sort of speaks to being open to someone you might not have considered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of online dating, right? I think online dating apps are problematic, but they're tools to create opportunities. So we may or may not get back into that. But I was dating prolifically online. I went out with, I had a count before I wrote my book. I went out with 300 people. I was not one of those people who stayed in, my wife was a serial monogamist, 5 years and 3 years and 7 years. For me, it was like 3 months, 6 months, 2 months. I never saw the point of staying in a relationship with someone that I wasn't going to marry. And so, I think actually I think that's the best way of dating, right? There's no point in changing people, no point in wasting anybody's time. So I cycled through people, not knowing really what I was doing. I'm not saying I didn't pass up on some really lovely people, but as I was iterating and learning about myself and what I was looking for, dialing in my process, I was coaching and I was giving advice to other people that I realized I wasn't following myself. I was a hypocrite, right? And so I'm writing articles for Match.com's Happen magazine about what it's like to be the single dating coach who's helping other people. And I realized that I wasn't making the right compromises that one needs to make for love. No, compromise has somehow a bad connotation to it, right? As if compromise equals settling. And compromise doesn't equal settling. You compromise your way into happiness. You settle your way into misery, right? But everything is a compromise. Your job is a compromise. Your friends are compromised. Your home is a compromise. Your family is a compromise, right? This is one thing where we don't think we should compromise. The problem is we compromise on the wrong things. So I'm online, dating prolifically, cycling through people, wondering what's wrong with women, what's wrong with Match, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with LA.
All the narratives.
There was nothing wrong, right? I just didn't dial in what was important in a partner. And so I met my wife at a potluck dinner in the Hollywood Hills on a Sunday night where I was invited by someone I dated who'd broken up with me. She's like, oh, we could stay friends. And I said, all right, I'll stay friends with you. I'll go to your party. And in my head, I'll go to your party and ignore you.
With other people.
I spent the entire night talking to two 37-year-old divorcees. No one was hitting on anybody. It was just a lovely conversation that happened to last from like 6 at night to midnight. We shut down the party. And I wasn't really interested. I wasn't like honing in on either of them. At the end of the night, I knew I had to ask for someone's number. And so I chose one of them, but I didn't feel that strongly about it. And we've now been together for 17 years, married for 15. And even though here's the punchline, even though I'm an online dating advocate, even though I've written books about it, even though I coach it, we never would have met online, even though we were both on the same site at the same time. And that is a positive about online dating. This means that we have better control over our own destiny because she wasn't looking for a Jewish guy. I wasn't looking for a woman who's 3 years older. I wanted to have kids. Starting to date a 38-year-old woman is questionable, but met her in real life. We had our 2 kids, which we may come back to that conversation.
Yeah.
On paper, we don't match. In real life, we connected, and online, we'd be 2 ships passing in the night, which is why I always encourage people to widen their aperture when they're dating online. You may be missing out on someone special because of your preconceived notions about what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and that's my question to you because, well, one, I know you work, you're the work that you do is helping women. Well, you work mostly with women, correct?
Exclusively with women.
Okay, exclusively with women. So you help them sort of widen that view, that vision, kind of see maybe someone they wouldn't normally consider.
Yes, I mean that's when women struggle with men, and we could flip the genders on this. It doesn't just go both ways. People will say things like, "I attract the wrong people." All the guys I like don't like me. All the men who like me, I don't like. And they're really just describing the single condition. Every single person feels that way about dating. There's nothing unique about it. So if your belief is that you attract the wrong people, my response is you don't attract the wrong people. You select the wrong people. You double down on the wrong people. You're not a magnet. It doesn't just happen to you. If you choose emotionally unavailable men because your dad was emotionally unavailable and you think that one day that emotionally unavailable man is going to change because you love him deeply, it's your selection process. It's like buying the wrong food at the supermarket. I keep on going in the Cheeto aisle. Why aren't I losing weight? Well, if you make different choices with men, your whole life changes. So my job is to nudge people by their own volition into different choices. Healthier choices in men lead to happiness. And when it's the definition of insanity, I'm dating for 10 years on and off online. I'm so burnt out. What's wrong? It's easy to say it's the app, it's the city, it's the men. It's probably your choices.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier about compromise, right? Because I think one of the biggest narratives too, when we're trying to nudge people, and I, with my clients that are single and do want to find love and are out there dating, the idea of settling is not ideal, or they make that synonymous with compromising, or they make that synonymous with considering someone else that might not consider. And so how do you help your clients open up their view, make better choices, but also not feel like they're settling?
Settling is all about how you feel about it. That's why I go back to feelings. I let our feelings guide. So here's the great irony of being a male coach for women. We can say women are more sensitive, intuitive, higher EQs than men. I can't think too many women who would argue with that.
No, and I'm not arguing with that.
Then why is it that women are more likely to ignore their own feelings than men?
Well, okay, and that's another question. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, why do we do that?
I'm dating a guy who has been sleeping with me for 6 months and his profile's still up and he only texts me once a week. And you stay. And you're really ignoring the feelings of anxiety, right? That's not on him. He's not going to dump you. He's not going to let you go. He's getting his needs met. He wants someone once a week. That's all he's looking for. You accepted those terms. So in Love You, my course, I tell women, you're the CEO of your love life. Men are the interns. We want guys who come in early and stay late. We want guys who want the job. And it's based on not just the resume. How is he performing? How do you know how he's performing? How do you feel? Are you walking on eggshells? Are you afraid of speaking your mind? Are you always wondering where this is going to go? Are you breaking up and making up? These are all horrible signs that people normalize. So my job is just not to tell women what they want. What do you want? A relationship that's easy? Do you want a relationship where you can relax? Do you want a relationship where you're cherished? If that's the case, stop accepting anything less.
Yeah, I think what's hard about that, and I see that so much too, and I love that you said all of that. And I think, one of the things that we have talked about on here is like this idea of playing the cool girl, right? So you don't express your needs, or you don't push, or you don't ask for more because you want to seem like you're, laid back and cool. And what that is like what you're saying, ignoring your feelings. So I've seen that happen quite a bit, and it doesn't serve anyone. And I think women do, yeah, settle for what these types of men.
Right. So now we're redefining, Beth, settling. Settling is being in a relationship where you can't let down your guard, where you can't trust, where you don't know where you stand, where you swallow your pride, where you bend over backwards, where he's not meeting your emotional needs. Settling's not being with a guy who's 5'9".
Which is, I'm laughing because a lot of women have that standard in terms of height.
We're settling, compromising on the wrong things. Can we compromise? And this is my point. This is my journey. It's why I'm such a fierce advocate for it. My wife and I are completely different on paper. We're magic in person. Why? Because of how we treat each other, because of how we feel. But I'm Jewish, she's Catholic, she's divorced. No one in my family's ever been divorced, right? She comes from family of alcoholics. That is not something that we have. We're Jewish. We argue about everything. Nobody in her family ever speaks their mind about anything. We're very, very different backgrounds. I'm wildly ambitious and opinionated. She's more easygoing and happy. All of it means compatibility. It's how the puzzle pieces fit. It's not dating your clone. And that's what too many people do. We try to go online, and women I work with try to date men who are just like them, but better and without their flaws. He has to be taller and cuter and smarter and richer and funnier and nicer and saner, right? And so now we've reduced our dating pool to nothing. And the truth is, your man doesn't have to be this way. I'm going to read you something. I know this. I'm on a tangent, but this literally happened this morning.
This is great. I love it.
This happened this morning. I got a client. She's in her mid 60s. She's retiring from her career. She's done very well for herself. She had a terrible upbringing, had a terrible marriage, like really 25, 30 years of awful, feeling alone, dismissed, verbally abused, just a horrible marriage that she finally escaped from. And she's very guarded and she's very bitter. And in working with me, we've taken down some of her walls. We've gotten in touch with her vulnerability. We've given her hope, right? And we have this conversation all the time. I don't want to settle. I didn't come this far in life to, right, to take care of a man or be a nurse with a purse. And we repeat this conversation over and over. I swear to God, I got this text this morning. LOL, a fisherman. Who would have thunk? It was a great FaceTime date, 10 chemistry, 10, wait, what do we judge it on? Attraction, 10, comfort, 10, fun, 10. If it wasn't for you, I never would have given him a chance. He's a boat owner, but he's shockingly refined. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't swear. He checks all these boxes, and I'm still shaking my head. This is his last season of fishing after 41 years. How many women have you coached who dated a commercial Alaskan crab boat owner? So this is a perfect example of a woman who is college educated, liberal, who had a very, very narrow slice of what would work for her. And in real life, she gave an opportunity just to talk on the phone with a guy who didn't meet her picture. And I'm not going to say it's going to go anywhere, but it's the exact same story of my wife and I, where we never would have met online. We met in person, we connected, and all the stuff, all the lists go out the window.
Yeah. Well, and even if it doesn't go anywhere with this guy, I think it's validating to her just know like she opened up her perspective and viewpoint and like she had this connection. So whether it hopefully continues to go well for her, but even if it doesn't, it's a validation that like, there's like, I don't have to be so narrow in my choosing.
Beth, I got a question for you.
Yes, sure.
I don't know where this is going to go. It's always dangerous to ask questions where you don't know the answer, like a prosecuting attorney. Do you have friends who are happily married?
I have to think about some yes, some no.
Okay. The happily married ones, right? Just picture them in your mind. Between you and me, I don't know if they're listening to your podcast. Did, did each of them compromise on something to forge that relationship? Did each of them give up something that wasn't on their bingo card? My bet is that the answer is yes.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
And these are the happily married ones, right?
Yeah, and I'm in an 8-year relationship. I'm not married, but very happy relationship, and we compromise constantly. And also, could have used your dating course many, many years ago, but I probably would say I was a narrow viewed perspective on who was going to be the guy. And Rob is not anyone I saw myself with, but we are together 8 years. We have a son. It worked beautifully. Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of the point, is we need to normalize this. There's a great book called The All or Nothing Marriage by Eli Finkel. And he talks about the evolution of marriage and what it's turned into. And it used to be, we're going to have 9 kids and 6 of them will survive and they're going to tend to our land. And then it became, we're going to have a better life for our kids. And we're going to stay together under God, even if we're miserable with each other, right? And she can't go anywhere because she has no education or money. And we've evolved into a society that's really more dating and relationships and love based on desire rather than necessity. But we've gone too far up what he calls Mount Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We're not about food, water, shelter anymore. Is he spiritual, not religious like me? Right? Does he like cool electronic dance music? I swear to God, this 63-year-old woman wants a guy who likes EDM. I was like, this has nothing to do with anything. Right? So we get so caught up in this narcissism that we have to date someone who's just like us that we lose sight of the fact that I could hand you a guy who likes skiing and he might be a prick. So who cares if he likes skiing?
I wonder for some women too, and I think about this in the lens of my work, that we create this like perfect image to almost protect ourselves, right? So if it's not going to be the perfect guy with all these things, I don't have to be vulnerable. I'm not going down that road and I'm not going to get hurt.
Right. But what you're doing, on one hand, you're saying, I'm protecting myself from being hurt. Here's the flip side of it. You're also protecting yourself from being loved.
I know. Yeah. It's so, yeah. And it's just sort of, it sounds like the work you do is helping women get out of their own way and open themselves up to other possibilities. And I'd be curious about your success rate.
I tell women this: you don't have to change, because you go on social media, you have all these influencers telling you have to change. You have to straighten your hair. You have to do your boobs. You have to adopt this attitude. You have to be a girl boss. You have to be all this sorts of. You don't have to change. You're delightful as you are. Don't change. Change your choice of men. That's it. Be you. Embrace you. All the good, all the bad. You can sand off your rough edges. It doesn't mean we can't all stand to improve, myself included. But at the end of the day, it's about loving yourself, accepting yourself, being kind to yourself, and raising the bar for what you expect from your partner. And if you keep the bar high, not height, weight, age, education, income, character, kindness, consistency, communication, commitment, right? If we raise the bar for how does he treat me, how does he make me feel, you're never going to end up in a bad relationship again.
Yeah, I give the same advice to my clients when they go on dates is how do they make you feel? And I think a lot of people without having that prompt or that seed planted in their head will go off, well, do we have this instant spark in chemistry? Is he good looking? Does he have this type of job? And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, did you feel safe? Did you feel comfortable? Did you feel like you were able to be yourself? And letting those be the markers.
Right. You just nailed it. I mean, I love the fact that we speak the same language, even though we barely know each other, right? For women in short term, right? I'm gonna get to share stuff from my Love You course. For first date, a lot of women should I give him a chance? Should I not give him a chance? You should never have to talk yourself into going out with a guy a first time, a second time. This is not something to talk yourself into. You should want to do it. All right. It doesn't have to be butterflies. It should be enjoyable, like hanging out with a friend. So, comfort, fun, attraction. If he scores less than 6 out of 10 on comfort, can I be myself? Fun, was it boring? Do I want to leave? Attraction, I would need 17 beers to kiss this guy. If there's no comfort, fun, or attraction, there's no second date. Easy peasy. Next, next, next. And in the long run, we need a man who makes us feel safe, heard, and understood. And if you can date for comfort, fun, and attraction, and in the long run, have a man who treats you in such a way that you feel safe, heard, and understood, you might have a winning formula no matter what he looks like on paper. Obviously, the presumption is that there's attraction. Otherwise, he's not even getting a second date. So no one's asking you to bend over backwards to give a chance to someone you wouldn't give a chance to. Certainly no one who's good at dating coaching would ask you to swallow a pill that you don't want to swallow.
For sure. We do speak the same language because I say the same thing. I think attraction is important. You had mentioned earlier it should be easy. And when I met Rob, it was easy in a way that I had never experienced before. There was no overthinking, like you're saying, the way I felt. Like I didn't overthink texting. I didn't overthink asking or being myself. I have had some clients, and I'm curious if you have too, that will equate easy, and both men and women will equate easy with boring. Have you seen that in your work? Do women come to with you?
My second book is, I'm not even recommending that you go get it because I've done better things, but my second book's called Why You're Still Single, Things Your Friends Would Tell You If You Promise Not to Get Mad. And
Oh my God.
it was co-written with a woman. It was a he said, she said type book. And she talked about this thing that, and again, this is her words, not mine. That women seem to overvalue this complexity, right? If it's tumultuous, it's worth fighting for. If I'm left guessing, where do I stand, right? If he gives me the silent treatment, if he shuts me down, if I feel gaslit, well, that's just part of the process of, and she's like, it's like a chaotic room. You could say, oh, this is really interesting in here. I want a feng shui room. I want something where everything just feels really good, right? And so in your life, if you've had a series of tempestuous relationships that feels like roller coasters, that's your normal. And so anything other than that feels foreign, but it's the other thing that's healthy. It is, because think about this in the long run. What's the best quality in a husband? Predictable. The last thing you want is a guy who you don't know if he's going to wake up next to you. You don't know if he's going to change his feelings for you. You don't know where he stands. You can't let down your guard. You can't speak your mind. The last thing you want is a guy who's unpredictable based on his moods and his whims and his character. So, what does predictable mean? Safe, consistent. What's another word for safe and consistent? Boring.
There's a really great therapist. I don't know if you know his work or read any of his stuff, Stan Tacton, and he talks a lot about attachment style.
I have his book behind me.
Yeah, he's great. I like his work. And he talks a lot about attachment. And he says, and I agree with this, that when you're in a securely attached relationship, you just move into the world differently, right? So when you have that predictability and you have that safe foundation, you go out into the world more confidently in your work, in your friendships. Like you just know someone is there that like you can come back to and trust and rely on.
I want to share a story really briefly. I've never shared this one specifically before anywhere. I remember introducing my close college friends, guys I've known for many years. So I'm 35. So I knew these guys from when I was 20. I introduced them to my wife. I bring her to New York for a New Year's Eve party. And they have a minimal opportunity to get to know her because of the context. And I remember one of my guys said to me, I can't say anything about your girlfriend. What I can say is you're different with her. That's what I want to see, right? She brings out a better part of you. And I like the way you show up. So that's what she brings to your life, regardless of who she is, right? She's good for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that safety that allows you to sort of put the walls down and be vulnerable and be more yourself. Yeah. You and I talked about this when we spoke previously about sort of the lack of vulnerability in dating. And I see this in my work. And I think, and you share with me your thoughts on this as well. Like everyone is, not to overgeneralize, people are afraid to be vulnerable. And I think that's very problematic because I think what's happening is people are not communicating clearly. And I have seen it where there was interest on both sides, but no one said anything about it. So it just sort of, fanned out.
Right. And again, I can't speak for younger generations. I'm 51. I'm not a native to social media. I'm on every social media platform, but it's not my preferred form of communication. I think there's something that's very performative that people put out there when everybody is a brand and everybody puts their photos out. It's just a very different thing than the kind of connections that it takes to be effective in the world and in relationships. And so know that everybody responds to moderation, right? And this is one of the things that gets lost. People think that vulnerability is weakness. That's an extreme thing. And vulnerability can be weakness. If you go on a first date and you're like, I'm so desperate to find a man to impregnate me. The last 4 guys have ghosted me. I have no confidence in myself. Please, please, please. Right? That energy is not going to be effective. And someone will say, well, clearly vulnerability doesn't work. I dumped all my shit on his plate and he ran away. Right? But being the I've got it all together, I've got no problems, my life is perfect, just look at my feed, right? That no one could connect with that energy either. So it is both. It is having the confidence, right, to put yourself out there and the vulnerability to allow yourself to get hurt because someone is also doing the same to you, right? When you've been the person who's been hurt, you feel like men are the perpetrators. How dare men hurt me? I'm not letting that happen again. Here's the thing that gets lost. 50% of the equation is you. Think about all the men that you've passed up on, swiped left on, rejected after one date, right? You're entitled to do that. That doesn't mean you're selfish. It doesn't mean you're bad. This is the nature of dating, is giving someone your heart and saying, hey, take care of it. And that's all you can do. If you refuse to do that, you'll never get the big reward.
Yeah. Yeah. That everything you just said had me thinking about. So we've had a lot of women on, so we're so grateful to have you on because we want, not only are you a dating coach and have years experience in this space, but you're male and we want male perspective. And so women have a lot of, and I'm sure you hear from your female clients. I'm curious to hear what they say to you about their frustrations with men. But I think that's part of it, is that there's so much frustration with men in how they show up, don't show up, communicate, don't communicate, that it does feel like, well, how dare he do this? And maybe not enough like reflection on self, but women are frustrated. Women are very frustrated.
And so we, in our position, have to do two things simultaneously. You need to validate someone's experience. If you're frustrated, I understand. You're not alone. Yeah, it's kind of a shit show out there. Right? That's true. There are a lot of people who are incapable of the kind of relationship that you're worthy of. And I need you to keep your standards high. And let's just say 90% of men are incapable of it. So now we're not going to be too surprised by it. We're not going to be too surprised when we throw through 9 out of 10 guys and pass. We're not going to be too surprised that 9 out of 10 guys you text are not your guy. Great. Now we've set reasonable expectations, so it's not so surprising or debilitating. Next, next, next. Not my guy, not my guy, not my guy. There's the validation. Given that, what are we going to do to get 1 out of 10 guys into the hopper and give that conversation a shot? And how are we going to understand that your experience is only 50% of the equation? And if you talk to 100 men and you ask them to talk about their dating experience with women, their litany of complaints would be just as long as yours and just as valid as yours.
What do you think some of their complaints are?
I'm going to turn that on you.
You're asking me to say what some of the...
What do you think? Because remember, if you're a heterosexual woman and you date men, who breaks your heart? Heterosexual men. If you're a man, and I'm going to pretend to be a man for a second, when I went out with 300 people, right, could I have been the bad guy every time? Is it possible that a whole bunch of people that I went out with weren't really, knew what they were looking for, didn't act with integrity? So if you're dating whatever sex or gender you're dating, they're going to be the people who seem like they're doing you wrong, like they're your adversaries, and they're not. They're just on their path trying to figure out, why is it so hard to find someone? So let's stop demonizing an entire sex as if...
No. I want to be clear. I wasn't saying they should not have. I am with you. Like, there's two people involved in the equation, and I always try to remind my female clients who kind of like might get stuck in old dating roles of like, they should lead, they should ask for the second date, they should express interest first, and sort of sit back and let the guy do that without asking them back out. Or so I want to be clear. Like, I think everyone comes with their own insecurities, their own frustrations, and rightfully so. I just think there's like, I don't think either side is normalizing that or giving each other grace in that space.
I agree. I'm only reacting to the, wait, so men have complaints about dating too? Like,
no, I know they do. I'm just curious what they are. I'm just curious. And women are curious what they are.
how much time do you got?
As much time as you. No, actually, my son comes home at 6. So.
If you're a man and you're on Tinder, right, you're swiping right on at least 50% of women. You know what percentage of women swipe right on? Less than 5%. So the male rejection rate up front is over 90%. No woman has ever experienced the amount of rejection that men experience. No such thing. Men get rejected far more, and they are the initiators. They're the ones, again, unless it's Bumblewood, men are initiating, they're swiping, they're texting, they're saying hi. They may not be doing a great job. I'm not defending bad male behavior. I'm not defending dick pics. I'm not defending crappy profiles. I'm only pointing out he puts out a ton of energy, and he might have to swipe right on 100 women to get 10 of them to acknowledge him.
See, I don't think women know that. I really don't.
That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, no, this is why this is important.
So here's the story. There's no good men out there. That's the narrative, right? That's the predominant societal narrative. There's no good men. Okay, so I'll grant you there's a whole bunch of guys who are not worthy, and not arguing with that. There are good men. They're online. But who gets all the attention? Tiny, tiny percentage of men. Everybody else is blocked out. There's an old OkCupid study that talks about this. Women find 80% of men to be below average. That means 80% of men are in the bottom 50th percentile.
Oh, yeah. Got to open our parameters.
That's to start. Now, if you're that guy and you finally got 10 women to swipe right on you. Does that mean anything? Nope. Because she's got a lot more options than you do. So what does that mean? She could afford to be pickier than you do, which means who's she going to go for? 6 feet tall, 6 figures, charming. Is he a nice guy? Not necessarily. Is he emotionally available? Not necessarily. But you're the second, third tier guy if all else fails. She's playing up. So all the women pay attention to the top 5% of men, and then they say, why are guys not paying attention to me? You just ignored 95% of them. You're focused on the 5%. How many people could get the top 5% of men? The math doesn't work.
I think what happens too, though, and going back to what we're saying, these narratives of settling, I think, and I'm just trying, I'm not single anymore. I've been in a relationship for a while, but I just try to think about what women might hear when they're hearing this, and that being, why can't I have all of those things? Why do I have to let go of the 6 foot successful?
Here's why. Math.
Tell us the math.
Do you know what percentage of men are over 6 feet tall, Beth?
I do not.
14%.
Oh my God.
So 86% of men are not 6 feet tall. So let's just lop all of them off. Okay. Now we're starting our dating pool before any other factors. We're starting with 14% of men. Now, have we factored in anything else yet? No. So what percentage of men make 6 figures? About 10%. Okay, so it's 14.14 times 0.1. Great. Now he's 6 feet tall and he makes 6 figures. Now he needs to have a college education. That's 35% of men. Masters, 10%. Doctorate, 1 to 2% of men. Great. We've just accomplished those things. We haven't talked about whether he's funny. We haven't talked about whether he's nice. We haven't talked about whether he wants marriage. We haven't talked about whether he respects women. We haven't talked about whether he's a good communicator. So we women start our dating pool at 0.001% of men and wonder, why are there no men?
Oh my gosh.
You just answered your own question. The math doesn't work. I got clients who are like, but he has to be Jewish. Okay, that's 1.7% of America. 1.7%. He has to be a vegan. What percentage of men are vegan? Less than 1, I'm guessing. So we could go on and on, but this is the problem here, is we think we need to date the opposite sex version of ourselves, and we don't. That is the death knell.
Yeah, well, with those numbers, for sure, you don't give yourself a chance at all.
Right? And so people hear this and they say they hear settling, and I've never said the word settle.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But that's so ingrained. I think that's a hard narrative for women to let go of.
It's a nuanced concept. So I would pose the question to anybody listening. Would you rather be alone for the rest of your life or date a guy who is 5'9"? Would you rather be alone for the rest of your life or date a guy who's got a little bit of a belly? Would you rather be alone for the rest of your life or date a guy who makes 80 grand when you make 120? Those are your choices.
Yeah.
If you refuse to compromise on anything, well, that's perfect. That's a perfectly viable choice. I will not settle. I will not give up on any of these things. And so then what happens? They go for that small percentage of guy who seems like he has everything on paper, and he's a narcissist who won't commit to you, who treats you like shit.
I think the other thing that happens is when women, and I'll speak for myself. I'll just speak for myself. When I met Rob, he was all these things that I didn't realize I wanted or needed or liked, like all the things that you're saying, like kind, comfort, safety. I mean, I thought I was looking for those things, but I wasn't getting those things. And so I think sometimes we think we know what we want, when in actuality, there's things we're missing or overlooking that we don't even realize would be more important than the height and the money and the...
Here, so when you say, how do you get people to do this? You ask them to talk about their life experience. No one calls a dating coach to say, I'm so happy. I just wanted to let you know, stranger on the internet, I'm so happy in my relationship. People only contact me after their 7-year relationship went south, after they got out of their 25-year marriage, after they ghosted 4 times in a row. This is the only time people reach out to me. What's the common thread? That man wasn't meeting your emotional needs, no matter how in love you were, no matter how much chemistry, no matter how good he was on paper. So that's all the evidence we need, that we need to change our decision-making criteria and shift it to character-based things. And then the other stuff becomes a bonus. I'm not anti 6 foot tall guy. I'm not anti rich guy. I'm not anti blinding chemistry. It's all wonderful feelings. None of that will make you happy for the next 40 years. None of it.
I'm curious. I want to ask you a couple more things before we wrap up, just to go back to the top. So, exclusively working with women. Have you ever worked with men?
Yeah, first 5 years of my career, when there was no such thing as a dating coach, I called myself a dating coach, called myself America's leading dating expert because nobody else had. Just kind of hung it out there, and 80% of the people who turned to me were women. I didn't ask for women. So here's something which, again, you may be hearing a defense of men or an observation of men, right? Here's one way we could throw men under the bus. Men need a lot of help with dating and relationships. They don't ask. That lack of curiosity, that lack of self-awareness is indeed a problem. But I can't change that problem. I've had women be like, why don't you fix men? If they pay me to, I would, but they're not paying me to. So my job is not to fix my entire sex. My job is to help you choose better men instead of how do I wave a magic wand over men in America.
Yeah. And if they're not asking for, why do you think they're not asking for help?
I think that there's something between a biological and a sociological component. I think in general, men driven by testosterone are more likely. And again, these are things that it's unassailable. Who's more likely to commit sexual assault? Who's more likely to get into a fight? Who's more likely to be a serial killer? Who's more likely to go to war? Right? Men are different than women, whether we're allowed to say that or not. Certainly they are in the bad ways, right? The bad ways, men are definitely so if we could say men are different than women, it shouldn't be terribly surprising that men who are less agreeable, more aggressive, are more likely to be kind of blinded and pig-headed, and they don't like to be told what to do. Right? Someone told me this: men don't like to be directed or corrected.
Directed or corrected.
Right? It's true. I didn't look around. Look around. You see it all the time. So, couple breaks up. She journals. She reaches out for help. She goes to therapy. She'll talk to a million people. What did I do wrong? Why did he leave me? How could I fix this? And he's just like, man, she's crazy. the lack of
Yeah. I love what you're saying too, because I think it still allows us as women to be the CEO of our love life, in that, we can make choices, we can make changes, and we can choose differently, with the understanding that men maybe not. And I know I had a couple of my therapists on, and we were talking about John Berger's book, Make Your Move, and they had a frustration with, they read it as if John was saying, men aren't going to do anything, so you do all the work.
Do you want me to chime in on that? Because, I have feelings.
I know you have feelings. Well, I'm just validating your point that, despite what men are doing or not doing, there are things that women can still do to be successful in dating.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole raft of things that people can do differently. Remember, if you can point to, and I can tell you a dozen things that guys will do wrong on a first date, right? Much less a dating profile, a text message, having difficult discussions, dealing with sex. I can micromanage the shit out of men's behavior and tell them exactly what to do if you want to make a woman fall in love with you. Like, it's not hard. If you listen to women, it's not hard to deliver what women want. But they're not asking me, which is why complaining about men, however valid the complaints, is impotent. It's futile. It gets you nowhere. It might feel good to vent about the state of men or the state of Bumble or the state of New York City or Seattle. And at the end of the day, I can't change men. I can't change dating sites. I can't change your age. Can't change any of that. How are you going to adapt to the reality of this situation? And I think it starts with, okay, 90% of guys are not for me. That's fine. But the 10%, it's not height, weight, age, education, income, right? Character, kindness, consistency, communication. That's what the top 10% means.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, one last question before we wrap up, because this is a big narrative. I mean, the podcast is called Quiet the Clock. And so I'm curious how many women you have worked with or are working with that feel the pressure of the time or age or the biological clock. A lot of women that have been on here have shared their egg freezing journey and finding themselves, 34, 35. I was 37 when I froze my eggs. I froze in my relationship. That's a different story. But finding themselves there and making that choice to preserve their fertility. So do you have women that come to you with that pressure, that time clock?
Absolutely. There's a huge spike when people come to me. Right? Very few women are reaching out to me in their 20s. They think they've got infinite time, infinite options, working on their career, and not my place to argue. Right? The calls start at 34.
Oh, yeah, yep.
The perception of, hey, all the guys that I want are now looking for me between 27 and 33. I've gotten to the other side of it, advanced maternal age, and the quality and quantity seems to have dropped, right? And I got to do something. So I wish we got into this more. I actually thought this is what we're going to be talking more about.
I know, but there's so much to talk about. So would you please come back on?
Yeah, no, I'm saying like I would love to get into the fertility conversation from a male perspective, because again, I know you all know your perspective on it. I think it's useful to hear a guy's perspective on it, because I think, and again, this may be controversial. I don't mind being controversial. I think people get the order wrong. I think the order is find a partner, with your partner, figure out how to build a family, whether that is IVF, whether that is surrogacy, whether that is adoption. There's a million ways to do it, but pour your energy into making good dating choices so that the family building part is with someone, rather than I've got my kid, I've got my embryo, now I'm going to try to retrofit a guy into my life. It is very, very hard to date as a single mom. Extremely hard, completely underestimated, right? That you're not really going to be able to do any dating, at least until that kid's in an elementary school. So you're putting your life on hold for a really long time to have a biological kid, and taking on the hardest job in the world to be a working single mother. So I always encourage people to put their love life first, even though there's the sense of panic. Put love first, and with your partner, you'll be able to do great things.
Well, I would, if you have the time, I would love to have you back on and just focus more on a conversation like that, because I think everything you shared today is so valuable to our audience, but I think that would also be really valuable too. And there's so much to talk about. So we took up all our time on other things, but I know that's the demographic you work with, is strong, successful women. And I think that's a lot of the women that find themselves 34, 35, unpartnered, thinking about egg freezing to preserve fertility. So I'd love to have you back and have that conversation too.
I'm delighted. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what I know, and I'm just very grateful and clearly passionate about this. I only want what's best for my clients. This is not me trying to impose my patriarchal values on you. It is simply, hey, if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, right? Dating online the same way over and over, swiping, texting, hooking up, keeping your fingers crossed, choosing guys who look great on paper but treat you poorly. There needs to be a different way to go about it that's more effective, more powerful, and gets you the love that you deserve.
Yeah. And everyone deserves the love that they want. So I think you're doing incredible work. I appreciate everything you shared with us here, and I hope to have you back soon.
Hey, before you go, I got a gift for your listeners.
Oh, yes. And also tell everybody where they can find you. You have so many great resources on your website, books.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my name's Evan Marc Katz, EvanMarckKatz. I'm on evanmarckatz.com. I have a podcast called the Love You Podcast. I've got a Substack called Love Splaining. I'm on every social media platform, Real Evan Marc Katz on Instagram. But for your listeners who want a free gift, I created something for you. It's called The 7 Massive Mistakes You're Making in Dating. If you go to evanmarccatz.com/quiet, you can download that free 25-page report. And it's got a few aha moments in there where you're like, oh my God, I'm doing like 3 out of 7 of these things, and I had no idea that I was accidentally sabotaging myself. So I'll send you free dating and relationship advice in perpetuity.
Evan, thank you so much. That will be very helpful.
For those who are dating, hopefully it makes a difference in your life, regardless of whether you ever hire me. I'm not worried about that. I just want to be a positive impact.
Awesome. Well, you have been for us here tonight. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope to speak to you again soon. If you like the episodes that you're hearing and you want to hear more, please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more incredible stories and tools.
When I froze my eggs at 37, I felt alone, I felt unsure, I felt confused and uncertain. And when you're considering such a big decision, feeling those ways do not feel good. So we have created a step-by-step guide to egg freezing so no one else has to feel that way. If you are considering egg freezing, if you're curious about what the process looks like or what you should be thinking about, then this guide is for you. We were really thoughtful in how we put it together. I think it's a great guide. I think it's really comprehensive and covers a lot of the things to be thinking about, to be considering, and maybe some things you didn't even realize you should be thinking about or considering. The goal is to not have anyone feel alone in this journey. So if you're thinking about this decision, sign up through our website, quiettheclock.com, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at quiettheclockpod. This is a very big decision, so I don't want anyone to feel alone in it. So if you're thinking about it, grab this guide, and you can also DM me with any questions. I'm here to support you through this decision and this journey.